Head of Asia Research at ANZ Research, joins us this morning. Khoon, very warm welcome to NDTV Profit. Great to speak with you as always. First comment on what next for the Fed? We know that the 25 basis points have come in. From all the commentary that came in from Chair Powell, do you think we need to re-look at whether you will see another 25 basis points in December?
Well, I'm expecting another 25 cut in December. And the reason, and I think Fed Chair Powell made it very clear, while we know who the next president of the United States is, we really don't know what particular policies and the timeline of the tax cuts or tariffs and in what shape or form is going to be implemented for a while. And therefore, it's very difficult for the Fed to preempt or second guess those policies. What they know, based on the current information at hand, is that inflation continues to track and will head towards their target. Rates are still restrictive, so they continue to move to a less restrictive stance. So even with the 25 basis point cut that they have just done on top of the 50 they did in September, rates are still restrictive. So from that simple point of view, I think they will continue to cut by 25 in December. Now, for 2025, that's where I think things might get more interesting, because as they get closer to neutral, that's where they might maybe start to slow down the pace of rate cuts, which means they might not necessarily move at every single meeting. They might take pause from time to time. But the trajectory for rates in terms of the Fed funds is still lower from here.
Good morning, it's Amina as well joining in. Sure, we take your point, but on one hand, the Fed chief has indicated that the economy is in good stead. And more importantly, the president says his favorite word is tariffs and taxes, from what we understand. If he does get down to cutting taxes and creating an inflationary setup, or at least early signs of that, do you think the Fed chief will still stay the course with rate cuts in December?
I think if they are faced with a greater certainty around what kind of policy parameters are going to get implemented, and timing is very important because you don't want to try and preempt something that you don't really know might happen, or it might be some time away, and you have to really make a determination of what kind of inflationary impacts that might have, and the timing is important. So that's why I think in 2025, once the Fed gets the Fed funds rates closer to neutral, that's when they can slow down the pace and maybe start to pause at some point. And then once we have more clarity around Trump's policies, then they will, respond in kind. And if it becomes clear that policies, if indeed they are inflationary and will start to push inflation higher, and at that stage, the Fed will be in a position to respond appropriately. But we just can't make that determination right now. And I think Powell was very clear about that in his press conference.
Khoon, the other thing is this China NPC meet, right? And just wondering do you reckon that China has the wherewithal to give out a stronger stimulus in this meet, considering that Donald Trump is now at the helm of affairs in the US? And can that trigger any kind of an uptick in commodities?
Look, I think it is no coincidence that the Chinese government decided to hold their NPC this week and only wait until the US election before announcing the size of the stimulus package, because there's no doubt the outcome of the US election will in some part go into their consideration of the size of their stimulus package. So we're still waiting for the announcement, but at the minimum, I'm expecting at least 10 trillion yuan in terms of new additional debt, basically additional fiscal stimulus. And with the, with the certainty with Trump back from 20th of January onwards, that might probe them into potentially a much bigger fiscal stimulus package, because now they're faced with, the real possibility of additional tariffs, which will have a significant impact on their exports. And therefore, there's a need to really start to boost domestic demand right now in order to provide at least some kind of a buffer or offset in case exports do take a hit next year. Hence, I think there's more urgency, I feel, to impart a bigger fiscal stimulus package. And hopefully, that will be what they will announce today.
Just very quickly, there was a report by Macquarie yesterday, actually, where they said at face value, Trump's election victory is bad news for Asia. They also go on to say that the region, though, is better prepared than they were in 2016. When we talk about the Asia bloc, is this bad news for India specifically, or are we referring to more of the Southeast Asia bloc?
Look, if Trump were to implement the tariffs that he's talked about at face value, 60% against China, 10 to 20% against the rest of the world, it won't be just Asia that will be hit. I think most other economies, particularly Mexico, will also be similarly negatively impacted. But this is where, we don't really know for sure whether those tariffs will be implemented or there's just threats in order to get countries to start negotiating with the US and come up with some kind of trade deal. So at this stage, the only certainty we know is who's going to be in charge of the White House and the Senate. We're still waiting to see whether there's a clean sweep by the Republicans. But I think I do agree that definitely Asia and the governments are probably better prepared in order to deal with it. And I think there's something we have to also remember, that businesses, multinationals, are very quick to adapt. When the first trade war started in 2018, 2019, there were similar, I think, negative forecasts about what kind of impact that might have on China and the rest of the region. There was some impact, but ultimately it wasn't as bad, and businesses adapted. Trade patterns shifted to accommodate the new reality, and I'm sure that's going to be the same. So I don't necessarily think the negative hit probably will be as bad as what most people fear in the end.
Thank you so much, Khoon Goh there.